Brothers and sisters, I apologize, I've developed a cold, so my voice unfortunately is not as strong as it used to be, so pray for me, inshallah we'll be able to finish the majlis together. I do apologize in advance. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Sallallahu alayka ya Sayyidi wa ya Mawlaya ya Rasulallah. صلى الله عليك وعلى آلك الطاهرين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين ورحمة الله وبركاته. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم: إن لقتل الحسين في قلوب المؤمنين حرارة لا تبرد أبدا. Let us bless this gathering of ours with the salawat for Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. In a hadith that has come to us through the holy Imams, mentioned as being one of the most famous hadiths regarding Imam al-Husayn salamullahi alayh, through the chains of the Imams to the Holy Prophet of Islam, peace be upon him, is a hadith that says, due to the killing of Imam al-Husayn, there is a fire in the hearts of the mu'mineen that will never cool. A fire in the hearts of the mu'mineen. Now this is before the death of Imam al-Husayn, this is during the lifetime of the Prophet, and the Imams narrate this hadith from him. Now what kind of event that the Prophet ascribes as having to happen in the future, and all mu'mineen, he means all generations until today, 1,400 years later, and maybe many years after us as well. What kind of event is it that leaves a fire in the heart of the mu'mineen that will never cool? All of you know that death comes to us all, inshallah. Whether we wish for it or we don't, it is from Allah's command. All of us have seen it either in our families or in other families. We know it is something that we cannot prevent. Yet, even if we have lost loved ones, and I'm sure many of you have, the first few days, the first day, what kind of fire, what kind of anger, not anger, what kind of grief do you hold in your heart when you've lost your loved one? But how natural is it after a few days the grief subsides? Maybe the first day you think, I cannot live anymore. If you've lost your father or mother, may Allah protect all your fathers and mothers. If you've lost someone so close to you, you've said, I can never live without them. The first day, you are in extreme grief. You say, I cannot live my life. I cannot eat, I cannot drink, I cannot speak to the people, I can't communicate. I am in grief. Sometimes I see people, they are crying non-stop. But after 2 or 3 days, life begins to go back to normal. That person begins to eat, communicate. He begins to dress properly again. Begins to come out after the janazah, after the fatiha, after the ceremonies. If, let's push it and say 1 year. 1 year that person is in extreme grief. But after 2 years, do we see the same level of grief? When the anniversary of that person, the loved one who's been missed, comes around, do we see the same level of grief? Not at all. When, after a few years, we see most people do not even remember the anniversary. They don't remember when that loved one died. Even though that day they died, they said, I cannot live past this day. But a few years later, the day passes by, sometimes they remember, oh, this is the day my father died. And sometimes it is forgotten, yes? What kind of a person is it? What kind of event is it? That 1400 years later, when we see the scenes tonight, inshallah, the night of Ashura, when we watch people around the world, and tomorrow morning, the day of Ashura, when it comes to pass, it's as if this person has died here and now amongst them. It's as if this person is their loved one, their father or mother or brother, someone dear to them, and he has just died in front of their eyes, yes? And the next year comes and exactly the same thing. And mashallah, it is increasing. More languages, more countries, ma'atim have spread all over the west and the east. People come to do the ziyarah, satellite channels have opened up, websites, speakers have come up from everywhere. MashaAllah, this ceremony has now increased. So not only has the fire not subsided, but it seems the fire begins to grow stronger in the hearts of the mu'mineen. SubhanAllah, what kind of event is this? So the Holy Prophet, when he addresses the mu'mineen, he says in their hearts there is a fire that never cools. What is the purpose of this fire? Why do we have this fire in our hearts? Firstly, my personal opinion on this, though I am one of the humble servants and my opinions are worthless, but I will offer it in any case. My opinion on this is that this is one of the reasons why the Tashayyu', the school of Ahlul Bayt, the Shias exist till today. This fire for Imam Hussein. Without this belief in mourning Imam Hussein, I don't believe the school of Ahlul Bayt will exist till today. I believe we will have died out. Why? Because the enemies have attacked us, because other sects have attacked us, because we have been massacred, because we have been targeted till today for genocide. People attempt to wipe us out, whole villages, whole towns. I have seen certain places in this world where they look at the ID cards of this person. If his name is Hussein or Ali, or any name that seems to be ascribed to the school of Ahlul Bayt, that person is killed. Or they go to an entire village. If they ask, is this village lived by Shias or non-Shias? It's lived by Shias, they go around killing all the members. So this has not occurred just today. This has been occurring for 1400 years. There is a genocide against the Shia of Ahlul Bayt. Yet, I believe one of the reasons why we have survived is the love of Imam al-Hussein, is the ma'tam, is the majalis, is the processions. This is one of the reasons this fire keeps us alive. Not only is it for our benefit, it is also to make sure that we can pass it on to the future generations. So brothers and sisters, take heed of the hadith of the Prophet. When he says there is a fire, there is a purpose behind it. It is not only a purpose of entertainment or for grief or for a few nights I can feel sad and thereafter I can go back and become normal. No, this is the battery that keeps us going. The ma'tam, the mourning for Imam al-Hussein is a heart that beats within us. Without this mourning of Imam Hussein, none of us would be Shia today. The word Shia would not exist. Imam Hussein's name would be forgotten. That is why this fire keeps us alive. So we must understand its purpose, number one. Number two, what do we do with this fire? Now that we have it within us and we know it causes us to give energy and move, what do we do with this fire? We first of all need to educate ourselves. Why did this person die? For what reason? Why is it that he sacrificed himself when easily you could have avoided the sacrifice? And what is the significance of this event? Yes, Imam Hussein is the grandson of the Prophet. It's a tragic event. He lost women and children. But I'm sure you watched the news. We read yesterday that the typhoon that occurred in the Philippines, yes? Typhoon. They said they've revised the numbers down of the number of people that have been killed. Revised down. That means there are less people feared dead than before. What have they revised it down to? 2,500 people. 2,500. A huge number. Imam Hussein, at the most, him and the people with him were 100 people. So if you want to talk about death and tragedy and masa'ib, there are plenty of masa'ib in this world. We saw what happened in the Asian tsunami in 2005. The numbers say over 200,000 people were killed. What a tragedy. Yes? So if it is only a matter of grief for the Prophet, we are condoling the Prophet. We are giving our condolences to the Prophet because he lost his grandson and a few family members, and it is an issue of family ties and blood relations, and we are upset. And there are, alhamdulillah, plenty of tragedies occurring every single day to the Shia and to the non-Shia. But it means this fire within our hearts is for more than this purpose. Why is it the incident of Karbala brings out a fire in us? It is not just the savage nature of the killing of Imam Hussein. It is the reason why Imam Hussein died and who he was. Not only is he a grandson of the Prophet, he is the Imam of his time. He is Sayyid Shabab Ahl al-Jannah. He is the master of the youth of paradise. It is as if on that day, someone went into heaven and killed all the people there. What kind of a tragedy is this? The Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Prophet says, Husaynun minni wa ana min Husayn. Hussein is from me and I am from Hussein. Yes? He says Hussein is my love. He says Hussein is a part of me. That means on the day of Karbala, the Holy Prophet was killed. Yes? That means that day isn't only a matter of one person being killed. That is the day the Master of Youth of Paradise has been killed. That is the day that the Quran was killed. Why can we say the Quran was killed on that day? Because the Holy Prophet, we mention this frequently, says in Hadith of Thaqalain, إِنِّي تَارِكٌ فِيكُمُ الثَّقَلَيْنِ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ وَعِتْرَتِي أَهْلَ بَيْتِي مَا إِن تَمَسَّكْتُمْ بِهِمَا لَن تَضِلُّوا بَعْدِي أَبَدًا. I have left behind the two important things. He points like this, he says, كِتَابَ اللَّهِ وَعِتْرَتِي أَهْلَ بَيْتِي. Two, side by side. The Quran equals the Ahl al-Bayt. The Ahl al-Bayt equal the Quran. And on the battle of Karbala, the Quran was slaughtered. So number one, we have slaughtered the people of paradise. Number two, we have slaughtered the prophets. Number three, we have slaughtered the Quran on that day. So when we say, let us look at the significance of who was killed, it is not an individual. It is not one person who was related to the Prophet. The whole of Islam was meant to be slaughtered that day. Yet if we want to look at it from a military point of view, Imam Hussein was defeated. Militarily speaking, Imam Hussein suffered a loss. He was defeated. The Ahl Bayt were defeated that day. But was that his mission? Is that what he came out to fight for? Or was there something beyond this? Was it worth giving his life to get something back? We mentioned a few days ago. How important is it that you give something to get something better? I buy something for 1,000 or 10,000 or 1,000,000. It should be something that's worth it. Why is it Imam Hussein gets himself, his family members, his companions all together and he says, Ya Allah, all of these are a sacrifice. When the Prophet Ibrahim was commanded to offer a sacrifice of his son, it was only one son. He wasn't ordered to sacrifice himself or the rest of his family or his wives or anyone else or his companions. He was ordered only one son. And yet Imam al-Hussein is commanded to take his sons, his brothers, his cousins, his companions, the infants, and let his wives and daughters and sisters be taken as prisoners. What kind of a sacrifice is this? Ibrahim the Prophet is told, you have become the friend of Allah, Khalil ar-Rahman. You have become the friend, the companion of Allah. You are so close to Allah. We are going to make you a prophet and an imam. He reached the status of where he was a prophet and an imam. You, Ibrahim, we are going to give you the task of rebuilding the Kaaba, of establishing the Hajj. We are going to have both your sons have generations of prophets, Ishaq and Ismail. All the prophets are descendants of Prophet Ibrahim. Yes? Subhanallah. Why? Because he admitted to Allah, yes, my heart says I am attached to the son of mine. But in order to carry out your command, I am willing to slaughter him. He brings his son. He tells him, I have seen in the dream that I have been commanded to kill you, slaughter you, sacrifice you, because Allah wants this from me. What do you say, my son? The son replies, if Allah has commanded you, then I am at peace with this. He brings his son. The narrations say, the ulama of tafsir say that he brings a knife. He starts the first time, he wants to slit the throat of his son. The knife is blunt. He tries again, and a third time the knife does not take effect. Allah commands the knife to speak. The knife says, the Khalil, pointing to Ibrahim, the Khalil wants me to kill, but the Rahman prevents me from doing so. The Rahman does not wish me to carry out this act. Jibreel descends upon the Holy Prophet. Jibreel says, you have been tested a great test. This is one of the greater tests of life, to see if you're willing to sacrifice your son. But you have passed this test, and we have deferred this sacrifice, this great sacrifice, ذِبْحٌ عَظِيمٌ وَفَدَيْنَاهُ بِذِبْحٍ عَظِيمٌ. We have replaced the sacrifice and postponed it, deferred it to someone else. Who is that someone else? The Holy Prophet of Islam. He says, there will be a shaheed in a land far from here. He will be one of my sons. He will give everything he has to preserve this religion, like I have given everything to set in stone this religion. He will give everything to preserve it. Amir al-Mu'mineen, salamullahi alayhi. In the Battle of Siffin, Amir al-Mu'mineen, one of the things that the people notice about him is his devotion to ibadah. He is struck by an arrow. The arrow hits him in his Achilles heel. Everyone knows where the Achilles heel is. It is the back of your heel. It is one of the most painful places if you're injured there. Very painful. It prevents you from lifting your foot and putting it down. Very, very painful. He is struck by an arrow that lodges in his Achilles heel. The companions, they tend to Amir al-Mu'mineen. Why does Amir al-Mu'mineen suffer these injuries? Because he's the first one in battle. He's not someone who sits in a room, presses a button, and someone gets blown up 6,000 miles away. He isn't someone who sits, writes reports and says, go and do so-and-so, go and do so-and-so. He's a person who carries a sword and says, let me go, I'm the first one in there. This is a real commander of Islam. Not someone who hears the Prophet has been killed and decides to run away to the mountains as far as he can. Until the Prophet says, come back, what has happened to you? You heard something, where are you? What have you become? And one of the women whose husband was fighting, she came out with a lance, she says, I will defend the Holy Prophets. The women, obligation on jihad is not upon them. Yet one of the companions, who becomes a leader of the Muslimin, Inna lillah. Amir al-Mu'mineen is struck by an arrow in the battle of Siffin. Show me, where is one of these leaders who ever led the battle, who was first one in battle, who ever suffered an injury, who we know faced some of the champions? Tell me, who killed Marhab, who killed Amr ibn Wood, who defended the Holy Prophet in the severe battles? Which was always the answer is Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayhi. Amir al-Mu'mineen is struck by an arrow in his Achilles heel. The companions tell to him, every time they wish to extract the arrow, the Imam is in pain. The Imam, brothers and sisters, at the end of the day is made of human parts like me and you. He feels pain. He needs to eat like me and you. The Imam feels pain, and we know how difficult it is for us to believe that Amir al-Mu'mineen feels pain. How difficult is it for us to understand this? What kind of pain is it that Amir al-Mu'mineen winces? That Amir al-Mu'mineen struggles to cope with? This is a terrible pain. Amir al-Mu'mineen is the one of the poets says, Amir al-Mu'mineen is the one that smiles in the battle and cries when he's in ibadah. When it is the other way around, people cry when they're in battle because they're about to die and fight, and then ibadah they smile and laugh because they forget who they are talking to. It is the other way around with Amir al-Mu'mineen. He smiles when he's in battle because things are easy for him. But standing before Allah, things are difficult. And he cries, he sheds tears. Usually people are the other way around. So the companions try to find a solution. They tend to him, they're not able to extract the arrow, causing the Imam too much pain. Who suggests a noble suggestion? His son Al-Hasan. Imam Al-Hasan says, I know of one way that we can extract the arrow from my father's foot. How? Subhanallah. He says, my father, when he stands for prayer, when he stands, he looks like the bark of a tree. You've seen these strong trees. There could be a hurricane, they don't move. It could be raining, lashing wind, they don't move. The bark, the center of the tree, never moves. Maybe some of the roots, maybe the leaves and branches, the bark never moves. He says, I have seen my father. Before then, he's moving, hurrying. Wants to do wudu, wants to serve the people, wants to talk to people. He's moving around, helping Fatima al-Zahra, tending to people's affairs. When he says Allahu Akbar and begins his salah, he becomes like the bark of the tree. He does not move. Things on him, whatever he is wearing, sometimes the wind will move them, but he does not flicker an eyelid. When my father stands in salah, we cannot get through to him anymore. Someone might need something, someone might want to talk to him, something needs to be done. My father's attention is on the salah. He says, I believe this is the only way that we can extract this arrow. Wait while he is praying, and let's approach him during that time. The companions narrate that they waited. Amir al-Mu'mineen did wudu al-jabira, the wudu that you need to do when you have an injury. He did his wudu and prepared for the salah. The companions say we waited until he started the salah. While he was in the qunut, we went to go and extract the arrow. What was difficult before the salah, we finished to count the arrow, we did not see the eyelids, the eyelashes of Amir al-Mu'mineen flicker or blink. Because his attention is somewhere else. Because his mind, his heart, his ruh, everything is facing one goal. He is disconnected from this life. What kind of a prayer does this man have? So this is the importance of prayer that he has. Now, listen to this. In the Battle of Siffin was one of the most bloodiest battles in Islamic history. One of the most bloodiest battles. It took over a number of days. Some of the narrations say 2 weeks or more. Imagine how difficult it was. The most vicious night, 10,000 people were killed in. It is called Laylat al-Harir. Why? Because on the night of whining. Why? That night, the temperatures were sub-zero. In the desert, when it is sub-zero, there is nowhere to turn. There's no building, there's nowhere to hide, there's no tree. You're exposed to the elements, and it is the coldest place on earth. That night of whining, it was so cold that all the animals that could be heard were whining. They had nowhere to go. They were whining from the cold. And on that night, 10,000 people were killed. The battles that took place didn't take place only in daytime. They took place at nighttime. During the midst of that day and that difficult night, when the arrows are flying, when people are charging, 10,000 people are killed that day. During the midst of that battle, Amir al-Mu'mineen observes it is now time for Salat al-Maghrib. He puts down his sword, puts down his shield. The battle is right in front of him, maybe a few yards, the distance between me and some of you sitting here. So not he's watching from somewhere else in headquarters. He's in the midst of the battle. Arrows are flying. We just described one of them struck his Achilles heel. He's in the midst of this battle. He lays down his sword, lays down his shield. He says, time for Salah. He begins preparing for the Salah. Ibn Abbas, who is his cousin and one of the great companions, he says, I saw Amir al-Mu'mineen begin to make his preparations for a Salah. I grabbed him by the wrist. I said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, you've commanded us into battle. This is one of the most difficult nights. You are the leader. And you are leaving us to go to Salah? Is this the time? Is this the place, here and now, in the midst of the most difficult night, for you to go and do Salah? He says he grabbed my wrist and moved it and grabbed it harder. He says, Ya Ibn Abbas, this is why we are fighting. This is the reason we are fighting them for this. If we don't do this and show them how it is done properly and make sure they don't forget about it and don't adhere to it, this is the problem. They will not know this. We are fighting them. They're supposed to be Muslims and we are Muslims. We are fighting them for the Salah. This is the purpose of this battle. Ibn Abbas says he opened something in my mind I had never paid attention to. So Imam al-Husayn's uprising is one of these things, brothers and sisters. It is not something that he wishes to fight for tribal ties, or because someone promised him victory, or because he's going to become a governor, or because he has some element of pride. He doesn't want to give allegiance to someone else. He doesn't see what. It's more than that, brothers and sisters. It is making sure that Islam, like Amir al-Mu'mineen says, the ibadah survives. The Prophet says, one of my sons will die to preserve religion. If Imam al-Husayn does not rise up, there is no Islam in a few years. I've mentioned this before. I've said one of the governors of Yazid, brothers, I urge you all to go and read the history books. If you do not read the history books, it's as if someone has covered your eyes and you are being guided by someone in front of you. Maybe that person makes a mistake and you will follow him. Maybe you'll hear something and it could be wrong. The only way is uncover the shield in front of your eyes. Read. Go out and educate yourself. The difference between us and some of the other schools is that we know what is in our books. The other schools do not. They follow blindly their scholars. They hear, go and do so and so, they do it. Go and slaughter the infant, they do it. They don't ask why. Us, we have been taught to ask everything why, when, what and how. So do not blindly listen to the speaker, including myself. If I say anything that is wrong, challenge me. If I say something, when you look at it, they say, this is opposite what the book of Allah says, take what I say and slam it against the wall. So you are going against the book of Allah. But how do you know that? You need to research yourself. Brothers and sisters, I encourage everyone, alhamdulillah, there is now internet, there is now online media, there are now English language translations of almost everything, Urdu translations of almost everything. Read. When we read, we discover the name of Ahlul Bayt in everything. In the Quran, in the tafsir, in the hadith, the dua. Their fingerprints are everywhere. Believe me, brothers and sisters. There is not one place you do not find the name of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Now at this point, Imam al-Husayn salamullahi alayhi rises up to preserve ibadah. One of the governors of Yazid, look this up, one of the governors of Yazid prays Salat al-Fajr while he is drunk. He has had alcohol, he's intoxicated. All of you know that alcohol is forbidden in Islam. Whatever intoxicates a little or a lot of is haram. Even if a small amount of it makes you intoxicated, it is haram. This is the law. This is what the fuqaha have said from the hadith of the Imams and the Holy Prophet. One of the governors of Yazid prays Salat al-Fajr while he's intoxicated. He prays Salat al-Fajr 4 rak'ah. All of you know, the youngest one of you knows that Salat al-Fajr is 2 rak'ah. The people behind him pray. He is the governor of a city, a well-known city, with tens of thousands of Muslims. The people behind him pray, so they don't say, you know what, he's made a mistake, let's get out of here, let's go pray somewhere else. They don't grab him by the neck and say, what are you doing, you are intoxicated. Nobody challenges him. He finishes the salah, they finish with him, 4 rak'ah. One of them has a little bit of bravery. He says, Ya Amir, you prayed Salat al-Fajr 4 rak'ah. We prayed with you, but it was 4 rak'ah. In a slow, quiet voice. He doesn't want to challenge too much. You prayed, Ya Amir, the Salat al-Fajr 4 rak'ah. What does he reply? Does he apologize? Does he say, I'm intoxicated? Does he say, someone else did the prayer? Does he say, SubhanAllah, did I do that? That was a mistake, let us repeat the prayer. He turns to him and says, do you want me to add 4 more? So that the Salat al-Fajr becomes 8 rak'ah? No one says anything to him. And I believe he would have, if he felt like it, to have prayed Salat al-Fajr 8 rak'ah. And no one would say anything. It happens once, it happens twice. It becomes something regular. Who is going to tell this person that you are praying Salat wrong? And this person is supposed to be a governor, someone who is commanded to lead the Muslims. Yes? That is one instance. Second instance, you know what they start calling Yazid ibn Muawiyah? They call him Amir al-Mu'mineen. How is the commander of the believers are not the Muslims, commander of the believers, a higher station, a higher rank than the Muslims. How is the commander of the Muslims someone who drinks alcohol openly? Is that possible? Impossible. How is it someone acts in a non-Muslim way and is supposed to command the Muslims? This is number 2. Number 3, after the time of Yazid, Abdul Malik ibn Marwan has a dispute. Abdul Malik governs Sham. He has a dispute with Abdullah ibn Zubair. Both of them want to lead. Both of them have a love for power. One governs Sham and the northern areas. One governs Hijaz and the southern areas. There is a vicious war between them for many years. Lots of Muslims have been killed and misguided by both of these parties. Both were enemies of the Ahl Bayt. Except Abdullah ibn Zubair used the killing of Imam Hussein to justify recruiting people. He said, let us bring down this Umayyad state that murdered Hussein, even though he had hatred against Imam Hussein in him. During this battle between them, Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, I've mentioned this before, Abdul Malik ibn Marwan is anxious not to see any of the people of Sham and any of the people that he governs to go to Hajj. He is worried if they go to Hajj, firstly they're going to meet with the Prophet's family. Secondly, they're going to meet with Ibn Zubair, who's headquartered in Mecca. He is worried if they go to Hajj, Abdullah ibn Zubair begins to speak with them, they may convert and join Abdullah ibn Zubair. What does he do? He says the Prophet, he fabricates. He says the Prophet says there are 3 places which people should go and do pilgrimage of. One is the Holy Mosque in Mecca. The second is my mosque in Medina. And the third is the great mosque in Al-Aqsa in Jerusalem. So he says, by this definition, I tell you, go and do Hajj and Tawaf and do the A'mal in Jerusalem. And don't go to Mecca. And it is said for a number of years, those Shamis believed they were doing Hajj properly, they would actually go to Jerusalem to do Hajj. Now I ask you, if the situation had continued, another 10 years, the dispute, how many people would start to believe that the Hajj is actually in Jerusalem? So now we have an issue with Salah, we now have an issue with leading the Muslims, we now have an issue with Hajj. What has been left of Islam? Yes? You understand the danger now that was happening during the time of Yazid. You understand why Imam Hussein now rises up. It is not a matter of political leadership. It is a matter of making sure Islam is not wiped out. Muawiyah did not openly show his non-Islamic behavior. He did not drink in public, he drank in private. He tried to avoid as much as possible cursing the Prophet in public, whereas Yazid does it publicly. When he is brought the head of Imam Hussein, he says, I wish the Prophet had seen what I had done to his son. I have taken revenge for my ancestors in Badr. He recites Arabic poetry. He openly says this. I have taken revenge for my ancestors in Badr. Your ancestors were kuffar. You are saying, I wish the Prophet sees what I have done to his son. That means you are a kafir too. Yazid was open about this. Muawiyah was not. That is why the greater devil is Muawiyah. He always wanted to show that he was a Muslim in front of people. That is why Imam al-Hassan was careful. That is why Imam al-Hussein for 10 years was careful. Because if he had managed to recruit an army large enough to defeat Muawiyah, people would have said, you are rising up against one of the Muslims. What happened in Safin? They raised the Quran in space, everyone said, let's stop fighting. Why? Because they believe in the Quran. Amir says, I am the walking Quran. They raise it and they do not know what is in it. I wrote it down. I was the one that recorded it. I can tell you what everything means. I can tell you the commentary on each of these verses. They do not read it, they do not understand it. Yes? Imam al-Hussein likewise. He has to look at the situation and judge. When is the right time to be able to come out and say, enough is enough, I must preserve Islam. If I told you in order to save your son's life, you need to give me £1, would you give me £1? Of course. If I say give me £500, you'd give me £500? Yes. If I said 1,000, yes. Probably whatever amount I say, you will say yes to save my son's life. Now add to your son, your daughter, your wife, your mother and father and brother. How many people now? 6, 8? And I said likewise, go and take money from wherever you can. You would steal, you would rob, you would do what you can to save your children's life. What if I said the entire earth? So not just your family, their neighbors, the cities, every person in this world. You would give, you would do what you can to save their lives. What if I said, I don't want money? In order to save the life of your grandchildren, the future generations, I want you to sacrifice yourself and the people with you that you love the most. You would think about it. Imam Hussein didn't even think about it. He said without any doubt, إِن كَانَ هَذَا يُرْضِيكَ فَخُذْ حَتَّى تَرْضَى. If this makes you happy, when he's looking at the shuhada, he says, Ya Allah, if this makes you pleased, take until you are pleased. Take what you want. My sons, my daughters, my family members. Take whoever you want if this pleases you. Whereas we would have to think about it. Shall I? Is it worth it? Who knows, I'll have grandchildren. Who says they will be guided anyway? Imam Hussein did not think, did not have the doubt. He went ahead and did it right away. SubhanAllah. So Imam Hussein's mission on these holy nights, brothers and sisters, is to save the Islam that you have today. Even the other side, who may curse the Imam, some of them, they said he should not have risen up against his Imam. His Imam was Yazid. Yes, there are believers. There are believers in the school of Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah's opinion is that Hussein should not have risen up against Yazid, no matter what Yazid did. Because they have a hadith, a forged hadith from the Holy Prophet that says, even if the ruler is oppressive and breaks your back, do not rise up against him if you have given allegiance. Ajib, an oppressive ruler breaks my back, but I don't rise up against him. He says, yes, Yazid was somebody who should be cursed. Yet Yazid was the Imam of the time, and Hussein was not. Hussein rose up, Hussein committed a sin. SubhanAllah. So there are people today, here and now, they praise Yazid and curse Imam Hussein. While you are in grief, they are happy. But those same people, when they come to do their salah, the only reason they are doing salah is because Imam Hussein did what he did. The only reason they go to Hajj is because Imam Hussein made sure the Hajj stayed. The only reason they can call themselves Muslim is because Imam Hussein gave his blood for them. They might not know it, they might not understand, they might not even thank or have any kind of condolence towards the Holy Prophet for the sacrifice. But believe me, if it was not for Imam Hussein, no one would hear the words La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. So on these nights, brothers and sisters, when we are remembering the tragedy of Karbala, and I mentioned the hadith about the fire in the hearts of the mu'mineen, now you realize why there is such a fire. This fire is the battery that keeps us going. Without this, there is no Islam. Without this, there is culture and tradition. Imam Hussein, sad story, let's remember him. But once you realize what he did, the fire becomes stronger because you realize he preserved Islam. I have to likewise remember him so I can preserve Islam. If I don't remember what he did, I can't give the sacrifice that Hussein gave. I don't have the courage. I don't have the belief. I don't have the tawfiq. Allah hasn't blessed me. Some people strive all their life to become shuhada. During the lifetime of the Prophet, they would not. One of them says to the Prophet, comes crying, he says, Ya Rasulullah, I have been praying and praying to become a shaheed. I've not had the success. The Prophet said, you have not been destined to become a shaheed. He said, Ya Rasulullah, pray for me. He just said, the Prophet prayed for him. The next day there was jihad, he was the first one to die. He became shaheed. So some of us have to be successful to give the sacrifice. It isn't easy to put a banner saying, Ya Hussein, on my head and go out and say, I want to become shaheed. Likely you won't be successful. Everything has a time and place. You have to pray for tawfiq. So let us say we tried to become like Hussein. We wouldn't be able to. So if we can't sacrifice like him, the only way to preserve the religion is to keep remembering his sacrifice. Teaching people about it. Saying, don't make the same mistake. Don't start forgetting what Islam is. Otherwise, if you do, something will have to be done. Electric shock therapy to wake the ummah up. This is what Imam Hussein did. The Ummah was asleep, he woke it up. Now whether they know or do not know, he done them a favor. He saved their akhirah. If it wasn't for Imam Hussein, all of the people from his time till now would be in hell. And you can quote me on this. I know some people will say this is a bit difficult to translate and put it out in the media. You can quote me on this. If it was not for Imam al-Hussein's sacrifice, everyone from his time till now will be in the hellfire. Because he did what he did, we stayed believing in Allah. Because he did what he did, we understand what the Quran says and believe in it. If it wasn't for him, no one would even know what Allah is. Most of us would be atheists. Most of us would worship some idols and things. Most of us would have no clue what greatness there is in Islam. We would not understand anything of it. So this is the reason why there is a fire in the hearts of the mu'mineen. Is this clear, inshallah? Everyone now understands what Imam Hussein rose up for. Not for blood relations, not for pride, not for political leadership. To save Islam. Otherwise, Yazid ibn Muawiyah, la'natullahi alayhim, both of them, they would have covered Islam with sand and buried it. This is what they were trying to do. Imagine someone bringing a spade, like they used to bury their daughters. That is what they were trying to do to Islam. Bury it under the sand. Imam Hussein stops them and says, no, 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 no. I'm going to do something. Even if you manage to bury Islam, I'm going to put a flag where Islam is, so someone will come and uncover it. And this is the role of the Imams after him. Imam Zayn al-Abidin, Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, Imam Musa al-Kadhim, Imam Ali al-Ridha. And the rest of the Imams, their job is to say, this is the flag, there is Islam. Imam Hussein kept a flag, a marker. Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq put it out and took the dust off and says, here it is. This is the roles of the Imams. Let no one be confused. So if we say Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq is truthful, are the rest not truthful? No! When we say Imam Hussein is brave, are the rest not brave? Not at all. But we say each person is marked out for something. Something that they excel in so that people can link to them. Imam al-Kadhim is known as the patient one because he spent decades in prison. What does that mean? The rest of the Imams are not patient? La wallah. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen describes in Al-Khutbah al-Shakhshaqiyyah, he says, I am as if there is someone who has something, a bone lodged in his throat and a thorn in his eye. You all have had the unfortunateness of having a splinter in your finger, yes? Splinter in your finger. Can you think without taking that splinter out of your fingers? Immediately you go and get something to put it out with. You go to find a needle. You go to do what you stop everything. You might have work, you might have children. You stop everything to take the splinter out of your finger. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen says, I lived after the Prophet for more than 25 years while I had a splinter in my eye. How sensitive is this? Not in the finger, in my eye. And I had a bone. All of you eat fish. Sometimes you eat a bone. Yes? Sometimes the bone gets stuck. Or sometimes you see your children, if you have children inshallah, you see that they eat too much food and they start to get the food stuck in their throats. Don't you pick them up, you tap them on the back, you start worrying about them, yes? They start coughing, 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 yes? How worried are you? But this lasts maybe 10 seconds, a minute, 30 seconds. Amir al-Mu'mineen says 25 years. I had a bone stuck in my throat and a splinter in my eye during the time of the previous leaders. Amir al-Mu'mineen is patient. So when we ascribe something to one Imam, it doesn't mean the others do not have it. It is only something to mark our relationship with that Imam. A title given by Allah and the Holy Prophet to those Imams. Now Imam al-Hussein has laid down everything that he did in written and in spoken word. Nothing Imam Hussein did from the moment Yazid became supposedly the Khalifa till he died has not been uncovered for us. Everything is recorded. So today, inshallah, I won't take up too much of your time. I'm going to read some of what Imam Hussein said. Everything that is authentic in the sources. I'm not interested, and with all due respect, I'm not interested in what the people that recite Noha and Metam and people like me, the speakers that sit here and say Imam Hussein said that, Ali Akbar said, I'm interested in the authentic sources. I'm going to read from you things that have been recorded in our school and things that have been recorded by the other school. Nothing of which I'm going to mention has been narrated in less than 2 sources. At least 2 different books, one from our side, one from the other side, has mentioned Imam Hussein's words. And I want you to listen because this is the reason Imam Hussein is rising up. And he's telling you exactly, not me, not Sajad, Imam Hussein's words himself. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I apologize, inshallah, just a few more moments of your time, but believe me, brothers, these words are eternal. These words will ring in your ears, and inshallah, you'll teach them to your children. These words are the most precious things we have in this life. When the Imam Hussein was born, the Prophet would kiss him and hold on to him, and he says, I love this, pointing to Hussein. They said, how much do you love him? He said, if I could die for him, I would. So let's listen to the words of this great person. Now, when the news has been received in Medina, secretly to the governor, that Muawiyah has died and Yazid commands you to get the allegiance from the people of Medina, Imam Hussein has ilm al-ghayb, he knows that Muawiyah has died. He sent a message in the middle of night while he's in the Prophet's mosque. Abdullah ibn Zubayr is also praying there. The messenger comes to them and says, both of you are required to attend to the governor's mansion. Abdullah ibn Zubayr is worried. Why? What is the reason? Nobody meets in the middle of the night. Imam Hussein says, I can tell you the reason. The reason is that their king has died and they wish to make us give allegiance. Already he has knowledge. He is brought before the governor. The governor says, you will give allegiance. He says, oh Amir, we are the Ahlul Bayt of the post of prophethood. He is describing who they are. We are the Ahlul Bayt of prophethood and the source of the divine mission. Our house is the frequenting place of angels. He says, in our house, the angels used to knock on the door before they used to enter. Come to my house, I will show you the footprint of Jibreel. I will tell you where he used to sit and talk to my grandfather. This is our house. And the landing site of the divine grace. Allah started Islam with our family and will continue it to the end with us. So it's not with another family, it's not with someone else. He started it with us and will preserve it through us. Yazid is a man accustomed to drinking wine and has slain lots of innocent people. A person who infringes the divine laws and openly commits all sorts of lewdness and impiety. Is it fair that such a person like me, with this outstanding background and high family nobility, takes an oath of allegiance with such a terrible person? Is it fair? Let's look at fairness now. However, you and I must consider the future. And you realize which of us is more appropriate to be the leader and more fitting to receive the people's allegiance. So he's saying to him very clearly, I am not going to give allegiance because Yazid does 1, 2, 3 and 4. So no mistaking why he's refusing to give the allegiance. That's number 1. Marwan ibn al-Hakam, la'natullahi alayhi, he is one of the supporters of Muawiyah. He is one of the brains behind the attacks on the Ahl Bayt. He is the one that actually kills Zubair in the battle of the camel. Because Zubair withdraws, but he kills him, shoots him with an arrow. He is the one that instigates the whole affair of the battle of the camel. He has been cursed by the Prophet. Him and his father, they were outcast. Unfortunately, the third Khalifa brought them back. He is there with the governor. He says, don't let him go. If you let him go, you will never be able to get him again. Now he goes after Imam Hussein, tries to convince him to give bay'ah, to give allegiance to Yazid. What does he say? He says, what does he say? He says, give allegiance to Amir al-Mu'mineen. At least he is the leader of the Muslims. What does the Imam reply? Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un wa ala al-Islam as-salam. Inna lillah, to Allah we belong and to him we return. If Yazid is the leader of the Muslims, we say goodbye to Islam. The world of Islam will disappear as soon as the Ummah is afflicted with a leader like Yazid. So he's saying Islam, not family ties, not leadership, not my pride. Islam we say goodbye to if Yazid becomes its leader. And I have heard from my grandfather, listen to this, the Messenger of Allah who used to remark, the caliphate, the khilafah is forbidden to the descendants of Abu Sufyan, forbidden, haram. So when you notice Muawiyah, not if, so when, which will happen. So when you notice Muawiyah sitting on my minbar, attack him and tear his abdomen. That means kill him. However, the inhabitants of Medina have noticed him on the minbar. Imam Hussein is saying, he sat on the minbar, but they never killed him. They didn't follow the command of the Prophet. And in consequence, Allah has afflicted them with Yazid, who is worse than Muawiyah. So now Imam Hussein is saying, I am following the command of the Holy Prophet. He says to us, do not allow the family of Abu Sufyan to sit on my minbar. If they do, ala al-Islam as-salam, we say goodbye to Islam. This is another point. Now Imam al-Hussein wants to leave Medina. He wants to leave and tell people why he is leaving. So he leaves a will, the last will to his brother, the eldest surviving brother that he has, Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah, who is only a few years younger than Imam Hussein. Only a few years younger. He's an elderly man. Imam says, this is my will, read it out to the people of Medina, so they don't get confused why I have come out. In the will he says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is what Al-Hussein ibn Ali has commended to his brother Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah, that Al-Hussein bears witness that there is no God except Allah, who is unique with no partner for him, and that Muhammad is his servant and messenger, rightly came from his side, and that paradise is a fact, and hell is a fact, that the hour will come, there is no doubt thereof, and because Allah shall raise those who are in the graves, and indeed I have not revolted carelessly, nor insolently, nor corruptingly, nor oppressingly. I have not come out for any of these reasons. Be aware why I have come out. Rather, I have risen up seeking to rectify the affairs of the Ummah and the Ummah of my grandfather. I intend to call for the good and to prohibit the forbidden. I want to act in accordance with that wishes of my grandfather and my father Ali ibn Abi Talib. Hence, anybody who accepts this from me, they have already accepted the cause of Allah. And if nobody answers me in this regard, I shall remain steadfast until Allah judges between me and the people, for He is the best of judges. And this is my last will, my testament to you, my brother. Success is from Allah and from Him alone. Very clear the words of Imam Hussein. So I'm not rising up to be corrupt, not to be oppressor, not to take advantage of people, not to mislead people. I am rising up to make sure people follow the book of Allah and the sunnah of my grandfather. Who knows the sunnah better? Yazid or the grandson of the Holy Prophet? Who knows the sunnah better? The son of the one who eats the liver of Hamza or Sayyid Shabab al-Jannah? Yes? No need for confusing ourselves. Very simple to see. Light and night. We'll move on inshaAllah. Imam Hussein is brothers, if you wish me to stop, I will stop. But inshaAllah, believe me, each word that you listen and hear and begin to think about and understand, thousands of angels are praying for you. On this night especially, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq says, the angels, 4,000 of them. Our holy Sikh Imam says 4,000 angels descend on the night of the 10th with a shirt that belonged to Imam al-Hussein, and they begin to weep. And whoever remembers Imam al-Hussein, either by crying or by organizing or by remembering or by speaking about Imam al-Hussein, these 4,000 angels praise him. So by listening, 4,000 angels are praying for each one of you, inshaAllah. The Imam is asked in Mecca by the son of the second Khalifa. He is asked, why are you going out? What purpose? You're going to get killed. Something will happen to you. Stay away. Don't go out. He's trying to discourage him. This unfortunate son of the second Khalifa did not give bay'ah to Amir al-Mu'mineen. He gave bay'ah to the first, the second and the third. Did not give bay'ah to Amir al-Mu'mineen. He gave bay'ah to Yazid. Gave bay'ah to Muawiyah. He gave bay'ah to Abdul Malik by going to Al-Hajjaj. Hajjaj was a bloodthirsty tyrant. He came to him in the middle of the night. Came running to him. He says, Hajjaj. Hajjaj wakes up in the middle of his sleep. Says, why have you come? He says, I've come to give bay'ah. He says, why in the middle of the night? He said, I heard that if there is Imam of my time and I don't give bay'ah, I will go to hell. Hajjaj, it is said narrations, excuse me. Hajjaj raises his foot and he says, you can kiss my foot. Give allegiance on that. A person like this does not give bay'ah to Amir al-Mu'mineen, does not give bay'ah to Al-Hasan or Hussein, but kisses the feet of a tyrant to give bay'ah. So when he is giving advice to Imam Hussein, be aware of this kind of advice, brothers and sisters. The shaitan comes in many forms. Our Prophet Ibrahim stoned him because he came in more than one form. 1 minute he was an old man, 1 minute he was a young man, 1 minute he came to him in a disguise. And finally Ibrahim got some stones and said, get away from me. I know, I can tell the different disguises, get away from me. Shaitan sometimes comes to you in the form of someone who wishes to advise you. So Imam replies to him, he says, have you not realized that a trait of the despicableness of this world, how useless is this world sometimes, how horrible is this world, that the head of Yahya, the prophet, the son of Zakaria, was given as a gift to one of the adulteresses of the Israelites. What a horrible world this is. Do you not know that the Israelites killed 70 prophets at the time between the dawn and the sunrise? and then went to their markets and started buying and selling goods as if nothing happened. Yet Allah did not punish them immediately. Rather, He gave them respite. And then after that, then He took hold of them. Fear Allah, He says to him, and never deny me your help. So you who have advised me, why don't you come out with me? Don't just speak the speak, come and walk the walk, so to say. But, as I explained, he was that type of person. The Imam writes a letter to the people of Medina, addresses it to his family members. Listen to what he says. He says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is a letter from Al-Hussein ibn Ali to Muhammad ibn Ali, his brother, and the other Hashemids and the people of Medina. Any of you who joins me will be martyred. He knows already. He started his journey, he knows what's going to happen. Whoever comes with me will die. You won't survive, you won't get any money, you won't get wealth. What does the Prophet say to his companions? Wallah, if you join me, we will be successful. Wallah, you will live. Wallah, you will enter the palace of Kisra. Wallah, we will take back Mecca one day. Imam Hussein is saying the opposite. Wallah, if you come with me, you will die. What kind of a companion will listen and join now? He says, and whoever joins me will be martyred. And those who turn away have not attained the victory. SubhanAllah, what kind of victory? He's going to be martyred. But the victory of having these 72 names recorded in gold, that each one of the Imams, when they go to visit Karbala, they cry for them. The Ma'soom, the infallible, cries for the Shuhada of Karbala. SubhanAllah. Wouldn't you want to be one of those Shuhada? It is said, when Jabir met Imam Zayn al-Abidin, Imam Zayn al-Abidin in Karbala, on the day of Arba'in, Imam Zayn al-Abidin says, "O Jabir, do you wish to be counted as one of the companions who died in Karbala?" He said, "I wish, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, but I'm an old blind man. How can I? Hussein is being killed already." He said, "I have heard a hadith from my father, from his father, from the Holy Prophet, from the angel Jibreel, from Allah, that a person who loves the act of one group, Allah makes him with them on a day of judgment." So he said, Jabir, if you love Imam Hussein and you love his companions, on the day of judgment, Allah will make you one of the companions of Imam Hussein, salawat. Imam writes a letter to the people of Basra. He says, now Allah selected the Prophet Muhammad, may Allah bestow His grace onto him and His progeny, from among the people, and honoured him with His prophethood, appointed for him his apostleship. After he had done his prophetic duty well and directed the people to Allah, He took him to Himself. And we have been His family members, associates, vicegerents and heirs, and we have been the most rightful of the people to attain His post. A little introduction. However, now he says, however, some people usurped this right from us, but we gave consent. Ya Hussein, why didn't you rise up before? Ali ibn Abi Talib, why didn't you rise up? Why didn't you go out and fight for your rights? But we gave our consent, for we disliked division. We disliked division and favoured the public welfare. This is the reason after Saqifa, Imam Ali doesn't raise his sword. Because we dislike division and favoured public welfare. I am now living in the 21st century. I might sit and think, David Talib, just go out and kill them and fight. But who knows the public welfare better, me or Ali? Amir al-Mu'mineen knows. Imam Hussein is saying, this is the reason we did not fight. Don't think we're cowards. The reason we did not come out was that we disliked division and we favoured the public welfare. And we know that we are indeed more deserving over this right than those who have gained it. I have already dispatched you, says, I mentioned that I have sent my envoy to you. Believe me, he says, that the Imam is someone who acts according to the book of Allah. He says here, I will rush to you inshallah by my life. The Imam cannot be but one who puts the book of Allah into practice. No sleeping Imam, no silent Imam. Someone who puts the book into practice. Not someone like me who sits here, talks to you about being good, but sometimes I do bad things. Someone who puts it into practice. Practice what you preach. He says the Imam has to be this type of person. Number one, is passionate about social justice. He will come out and make justice amongst the people. Is devoted to the rights and has devoted everything for the sake of Allah. This is an Imam. Not Yazid, who sends somebody, who sends an army, who sends someone else to kill someone while he's sitting in his palace. Imam Hussein sends everybody into battle. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Imam makes a speech in Mecca. He says, after praising Allah, he says, death has been destined for the descendants of Adam, so humans, like the way that a necklace looks good on the neck of a young girl. Whenever you see a beautiful jewelry and a girl wearing it, you say, that is lovely. He says, death is exactly like that. It is meant to go around our necks. It is meant to follow us. So he understands that death is coming. My passion to be reunited with my ancestors is like that of Yaqub for Yusuf. How much did Yaqub cry until he went blind? So he could see his son. He says, my desire to go back to my grandfather is exactly like that. And I see myself in a battlefield where I am being torn apart by desert wolves. He knows what will happen to his body. He says, torn apart by desert wolves. There is no escape from this destiny. Whatever pleases Allah, pleases us also, the Ahlul Bayt. We are patient over his tests, and he shall grant us the rewards of those who are patient. He says, I know what is required. I know that I will die. My body will be cut up. I know that I will have to give my children. But if it pleases Allah, I am pleased also. He writes, or he says to Abdullah ibn Zubayr, Abdullah ibn Zubayr says to him, why don't you stay in Mecca? He says, I have heard from my grandfather that a ram will be sacrificed in Mecca. A ram will be slaughtered. I don't wish to desecrate Mecca. I don't want to be the one whose blood is shed in Mecca. SubhanAllah, he knows that he could stay in Mecca. But, and this is what happened to Abdullah ibn Zubayr, later on, he stayed in Mecca and he was killed. And he says, I do not wish the place where people come and do their ihram, the place where you must keep tahar at all times, for it to be soiled by my blood. I wish to avoid that. He says to the people, O people, indeed, if you observe piety and are cognizant, you understand our right. It will be more desirable to Allah that we, the Ahlul Bayt, upon whom His progeny and Allah bestows grace, we take the affair. He says it is more right that we govern the Muslims. Hence we are more deserved than the Umayyads, he says. And those who have been committing crimes. So now he says they are committing crimes. If someone commits a crime, we capture them. We decide to take them to Hakim al-Shari. If they're stealing, there's one punishment. If it's adultery, if it's another. If it's murder, it's something else. He says these people are committing crimes. So do not let us fall behind while they are put in front. Do not avoid giving bay'ah out of being afraid. Imam Hussein's speech on Ashura, he gives a long speech. I won't get into the details. He gives a long speech. After the speech, he says to the companions, my companions, it is now night time. In a few minutes, people will go to sleep, the eyes will quieten, the area will darken. I say to you, my companions, that the enemies are wanting to get to me, to kill me. Why don't each one of you companions take one of my members of the Ahlul Bayt and go use this night to get away. Go to one of the villages, the towns. If the enemy gets me tomorrow morning, they won't come after you. The Ansar stand up. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas and the Ahlul Bayt stand up. Abu al-Fadl says, Ajib, today, this night and tomorrow is the reason why my father gave birth to me. The reason why I am born is to be here tonight. And you want me to leave? The sons of Aqil, they are told, you've already lost Muslim. You've already seen a shaheed. Go. They said, Ajib, to see Muslim die is sweeter for us than honey. For your cause, sweeter than honey. The Ansar all rise up. Zuhair ibn al-Qayn says, Wallah, if I am killed, and while I'm being killed, my body is cut up into pieces, and then my body is set alight while I'm alive, set alight, and I burn in agony, and I die, and I am brought back 1,000 times, it is easier for me than to walk away from this. This is Zuhair ibn al-Qayn. Imam blesses them. He says, I have not seen companions more loyal than my companions, nor an Ahlul Bayt better than my Ahlul Bayt. And he has seen the companions of the Holy Prophets. SubhanAllah, he says these are the best companions a person could have. In the midst of the night, one of the messengers of Umar ibn Sa'ad, or just before the night time, one of the messengers of Umar ibn Sa'ad approaches. Imam says to his brother Abbas, Fidak, may my life be sacrificed to you. A ma'soom saying my life be sacrificed to a non-ma'soom. What does this mean? That Al-Abbas is not someone ordinary. The Imam is willing to die for him. The infallible, holy Imam says, my life be sacrificed for you, Ya Abbas. He says, go and find out what do they want. The messenger comes and says, Umar ibn Sa'd says, now, either you give bay'ah or we will fight. And Abbas goes back to Imam al-Hussein. He says, what shall I reply? He says, tell them, give us one last night. Why? He says, because I want to spend it in prayer and I want to read the Quran because I love reciting the Quran. This message goes back to Umar ibn Sa'd. There is a dispute. One of them says, Ajib. If these were non-Muslims and they asked us for one last night, we would give them one last night. What about the grandson of the Prophet? Give them one last night. Umar ibn Sa'd agrees, says one more night. Tomorrow you give us a response. Imam al-Hussein spends the whole night in dua and prayer and kissing some of the children. One last time. At one moment, he comes out of his tent and begins to walk towards the enemies. Nafi' ibn Hilal al-Jamali, one of the companions who caught up with the Imam from Kufa, he says, my heart began to follow Imam Hussein. I was worried. Maybe someone throws an arrow or a spear. Maybe someone gets the Imam and assassinates him. So I came out. I said, Sayyidi, my master, why have you come out? I am worried for you. He says, Nafi', I came out just to make sure that tomorrow we are prepared. Tomorrow we are prepared for the battle. He says, while I was speaking with him, the Imam took hold of my hands. He says, Nafi', in between there, you can see that the moon has shone upon the light of a valley between two mountains. It is not far from here. The enemy is not far from this side, but the mountains are that side. Why don't you go while no one is looking and get away from here? I have given you permission. Go now. Take this night as a shelter and go, get out of here. Nafi', what does he do? He falls to the feet of the Imam and begins to kiss the Imam's feet. He says, Sayyidi, I bought my sword for 1,000 dirhams. I bought it for this fight. And I bought my horse for 1,000 dirhams. I gave all my money because I wanted the best weapon and the best horse. I gave everything that I had to fight for you tonight. And you want me to leave and go? No, wallah. He says, Imam blessed me, took me back to the camp. Then he went to sit with Sayyidah Zainab in her tent. I waited outside guarding them. I heard Sayyidah Zainab asking Imam al-Hussein, saying to him, my master, my brother, did you test your companions? Have you seen if they are brave and loyal? We know what happened with Amir al-Mu'mineen. We know what happened with Al-Hassan. Have you checked that your companions are loyal? He says, my sister, yes I have. Look how strong Sayyidah Zainab is. Ajib. What kind of woman is this? She looks at the companions. She's asking the Imam, have you checked? She is aware of the battle. She stands before Yazid. She leads the men and women. She takes care of Zayn al-Abidin. She goes back to me. What kind of woman is this? Believe me, this is no ordinary woman. This is a mountain. Sayyidina Zainab is a mountain. A mountain of courage, of bravery, of fearlessness. Me and you would be shaking. Look at Sayyidina Zainab. No ordinary woman. She is the equal of 1,000,000 men. So do not let anyone say anything bad about women when we have someone like Sayyidina Zainab alive. Someone like Sayyidina Zainab who is alive till today when we read her speech to Yazid. She's a mountain, brothers and sisters. She says to him, have you checked your companions? And you asked, have you tested them? He says, I have tested them and they are loyal. Wallah, they wish for death like the infant wishes to suckle the milk from its mother's breast. Have you seen how hungry a child gets? He says, they want to die for me in exactly the same way. They can't wait to do it. Nafi' says, when I heard these words, I became upset that Sayyidina Zainab is still worried, that the daughters of the Holy Prophet are feeling insecure. So I ran to Habib ibn Mudar. Habib was the leader of the Ansar. I ran to him and shouted, Habib, Habib, come out. Habib came out. He said, what is it? He said, I heard Sayyidina Zainab asking the Imam, have you tested your companions? Sayyidina Zainab is worried. She might not be able to sleep tonight. She's afraid of what will happen tomorrow. He says, I will take care of this. He comes out saying, where are the Ansar? Ayn al-Ansar. The narrators say that rushed out of the camps, both sides. The Ansar and the Ahl Bayt. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas comes out without his turban and barefoot. He says, Labbaik, Labbaik, Habib, what do you want? He says, not you. The Ahl Bayt go back. The Ansar come with me. The Ansar come. He says, the daughters of the Holy Prophet are afraid tonight. Let us go and show our loyalty to them. They ask permission from Imam al-Hussein. They sit outside the tent of Sayyidina Zainab. Firstly, they cry. Secondly, they say, Sayyidina Zainab, we will die for Hussein 1,000 times. You have nothing to fear while we are alive. Sayyidah, we have come here because we are worth nothing but the dust under your feet. SubhanAllah. They say we will give our life for everything. Sayyidah Zainab says, Jazakumullah khair. Thank you, you have reassured us. Imam al-Hussein, brothers, tonight is a sad night. The Battle of Karbala is a sad battle. The 10th of Ashura is a sad day. Imam al-Sadiq, when he used to come to Ashura, they used to say he never used to smile. He never used to have perfume on. On the 10th day, he would come out barefooted and bareheaded. He would come out weeping out of his house, as if Hussein had just died in front of him. Tomorrow, let no one smile, let no one laugh. It is the saddest day in mankind's history. Imam al-Hussein on this night spends the last night with his family. Why must you grieve? Because it will save you. Number one, there is a story related from one of the great khutbah. He says, I used to give in Najaf 7 majalis a day, starting from morning to midnight, 7 majalis. I had no time to speak with my family or to talk to anyone, because I finish 1 hour, I make my way to somewhere else, and I start another hour majlis. I have no time to talk to anyone. True story, brothers and sisters. He says, from moving from one of the majalis, I was going through an alleyway to get a shortcut in Najaf. One of the people of Najaf stopped me. I know this person. He's someone I know, but sometimes he does good things, sometimes bad things. He has his faults. He says, he stopped me. He said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to a majlis. He said, will you recite the majlis for me? I said, go and tell the majlis. He said, no, I said, recite the majlis for me. I said, where? He said, here and now, in an alleyway. Is he making fun of me? He said, I looked around. I said, look, there is no member, there's no speaker. I can't stay here. He said, I'll become your member. Please recite for me. He said, the man was insistent. I said, how will you become a member? He crouched on his feet and had me sit on his back. I said, okay, I'll recite 2 minutes for this man and leave. He said, I recited. The man began to cry. He cried. I finished. He got up, he kissed me. He said, you have saved me. I didn't pay attention. He said, you have saved me. I didn't pay attention. I went, carried on my majalis. 2 days later, there was a gathering of ulama. While we were sitting, one of them says, have you heard of Fulan? I said, yeah, I saw him the other day. He said, he died, but I had the weirdest dream. I saw this man in my dream. I saw this man coming to be buried in Najaf, next to Amir al-Mu'mineen, in the Haram. They were about to bury him. Amir al-Mu'mineen comes out and says, don't bury this person here. Only the people that have been pious all throughout their life will be buried here. This person has done faults, bury him somewhere else. He said this man began to cry, because being buried next to Amir al-Mu'mineen, being told no is a disaster. He began to weep and cry. He said, in this other scholar says, I saw then Imam al-Hussein salamullahi alayhi come out, going to his father in the most respectful way. He said, my father, this is my member. This is my member, this person. Would you not like my member to be buried next to you? Would you not be happy to have my member next to you? And I have asked Allah to forgive this man of all his sins. That other man, the scholar that was there that did the majlis, he said, I began to weep and cry, weep and cry. I said, subhanAllah, this man saved his hereafter. By a majlis, I say 2 minutes. Number one. Number two, tomorrow morning, those of you who can switch on Karbala TV, you'll just be able to see the scenes from Karbala. Switch it on 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, as early as you can. See what they do tomorrow morning. One of the things they do is they run about 7 miles, 25, 30 minutes running from a village called Tuwarij, outside Karbala, running all the way to the shrine of Imam Hussein. They run barefooted, not covering their hair. Some of them had mud on their face. They run and they slap their wrists, they slap their chests, beating their chest all the way for half an hour. They run as if someone has set their backs on fire. They're running like madmen. Wallah. This is not to make mockery of them. But they ran. If you saw them, you'd be terrified from what the scene is. Tomorrow morning they will run. This is called Rakfat Tuwarij, the run of Tuwarij. This is an old custom. The people of Karbala used to do it a long time ago. 200 years ago, Sayyid Mahdi Bahr al-Ulum, who is one of the greatest scholars in Ithna Ashari belief, he apparently has met the Imam al-Hujjah 3 times. He, one day, is watching the scene. He's a man of 50 years old. He's a grand scholar, long beard, elderly man, got a walking stick, people around him, his students. And you've seen the scholars, they come in quietly, they move around quietly. He is standing with his students watching the scene. And these men are running, slapping their heads and running. At that moment, Sayyid Mahdi Bahr al-Ulum throws his turban off and jumps in the middle of the crowd and begins to run and slap his face. After a few minutes, the students grab hold of him, they bring him back, they say, Sayyid, what have you done? Baba, this is something the common people do. We don't do this. Us, the scholars, the leaders of the community, we stand and watch. We don't get involved like this. This is the common people. You are an old man, graceful man, you are a teacher. How did you do? What came over you? He said, do not blame me. While I was watching the scene in front of me, I saw the 12th Imam running with these people. I saw the 12th Imam bareheaded, barefooted, slapping his face, crying, Wa Husayna, Wa Husayna. So do not blame me if I join my Imam. Tomorrow, this is the day of Ashura, brothers and sisters. Do not take it lightly tomorrow. On this day, Imam al-Hussein, after he saw the Ansar depart, and began to ask, where are the heroes? Where are the warriors? Ali al-Akbar comes out. And he says, my father, my turn. We have let the Ansar go, it is now my turn. Let me come out, Ibn Rasulullah. Imam al-Hussein did not say no, wait, later. He said, go my son. I know that you have to become a shaheed. He then says to the people, Allahumma ishhad, witness Allah, that out comes to them the most resembling person to the Prophet in his akhlaq, in his looks, in the way he speaks. If we ever miss the Holy Prophet, we would look at the face of Ali al-Akbar. SubhanAllah. This is the Prophet, again now, the Prophet being killed in Karbala. He says the Prophet is coming out to fight these people. Ali al-Akbar takes the permission. He comes out to the battlefield. He fights like a champion. He kills 200 men in one battle. Layla, his mother, comes to Imam al-Hussein. She says to him, my master, where is my son? He says, your son has come out. So far he is successful. She notices after a few minutes, the Imam's face begins to change. She says, what has happened? He says, pray because someone is coming to kill your son. Layla goes back into the tent. Layla is the mother of Imam Ali. She goes back into the tent. She sits down and raises her hands. She says, Ya Allah, you returned Yusuf to Yaqub. Return Ali al-Akbar to me one last time. Allah answers her prayer. The Imam says, Layla, here is your son. Your prayer has been answered. He comes back. He says, Sayyidi Abu Abdullah, my father, are you proud of me? Are you happy with what I have done? He says, yes. He says, give me a reward. Everyone who's done something good wants a reward, especially from his father. I want a reward. He says, what, my son? He says, my heart is burning. Give me a sip of water. Imam Hussein says, my son, if I had water, you would be the first to receive it. My son, go and fight for the daughters of Rasulullah. For surely Fatima al-Zahra will give you water in a short while. Ali al-Akbar thanks the Imam, comes out to fight, fights like a hero. Then the Imam hears the cry, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. It is said every time the Imam heard those words, when he used to come, he used to bring his horse near the fallen. He used to get off the horse and sit next to the shaheed. In this instance, he threw himself from the horse. He landed next to the body of Ali al-Akbar. He began to cradle him. He saw that his head was split open. He begins to weep for Ali al-Akbar. He says, my son, I see on one side tears, and I see on one side you are smiling. He says, Bala ya Rasulullah. Yes, my father. The side that is smiling, because I can now start to see Fatima al-Zahra. She's bringing me cold water from Kawthar. She's saying, welcome my son. But I am crying because I see after me what is going to happen to you. I see that after my death you will be alone, my father. He carries Ali al-Akbar back. Layla welcomes him. How does she welcome him? Weeping and crying. This was a son that she raised. She worked hard for many years. She sees him, the enemies have cut his body into pieces. Imam al-Hussein calls al-Abbas. He says, help me carry him, because there are too many pieces of Ali al-Akbar. Al-Abbas carries the pieces of Ali Akbar's body for Imam Hussein, and they put him by the shuhada. After Imam Hussein sees the shuhada go, one after the other, the Ahlul Bayt, one after the other, he stands alone in the battlefield. He cries out, where are my supporters? Who will bring me my horse? ألا من يقدم لي جوادي وأنا ابن رسول الله. Is there anyone left out there to bring my horse for me? Sayyidah Zainab says, my brother, what are you crying out for? There is no one left in the battlefield. أخ لمن تنادي. You have broken my heart. No one can hear you anymore. She says, I went and bought the horse of Imam al-Hussein myself. And I began to cry. I said, how hard is my heart? How cold-hearted am I? I'm bringing the horse of death. this horse will take my brother towards death. She begins to weep. She brings the horse to Imam al-Hussein. Imam al-Hussein begins to mount it. Zainab cries out, Kulthum, Layla, Ramla, Rabab, Sakina, Fatima, everyone come and give your farewell to Imam al-Hussein. Imam al-Hussein says that I was standing and all of these women surrounded me. More than 80 women surrounded him. One was kissing his hand, one was kissing his feet, one was kissing his shirt, one was kissing his face, one was kissing his neck. All of them crying, do not leave us, do not leave us. Imam al-Hussein makes his way to the battlefield. As soon as he starts to move, he hears a voice, my brother, wait one last time. He turns around, he sees it is Zainab. Sayyidah Zainab, what do you want? She says, I want you to get off the horse. He gets off the horse. He says, now what do you want? She says, come next to me. He comes next to her. He says, what do you want, Sayyidah? She says, open your shirt. He opens his shirt. She begins to kiss him in his chest and kisses him in his neck. She turns her face to Medina. She says, Ummah, my mother Fatima Zahra, I have given back the amanah. I have done what you told me. He said, my sister, what is it Fatima Zahra told you? She said, before Fatima Zahra died, she called me forward. She said, my daughter, one day Hussein will be alone in Karbala. When you see that day, kiss him in his chest because the horses will trample on his chest. Kiss him in the neck because the swords will fall on his neck. They begin to cry a little while. Imam Hussein gets on the horse. He says, my sister, go back. Do not let the enemies laugh at us and mock us. Go back one last time. Imam Hussein makes his way to the battlefield. It is said at the beginning, he attacks the enemy. He kills more than 1,000 people and injures them. What a hero Imam Hussein is. Umar ibn Sa'ad shouts out, Wayhakum, don't fight him one by one. Do you know who he is? He is the son of the man who used to fight the champion of the Arabs. Fight him as a group. Imam Hussein is now surrounded. Spears, arrows, all sorts of things. Imam al-Hussein begins to get tired. Now he has a last bit of energy. What does he decide to do? He decides to make an attack on the river. He reaches the river, moves the enemies. He comes down to the river. His heart is boiling. It is said that he goes to reach the water. The horse next to him puts its head into the water. Imam Hussein looks at the horse. He says, my horse, you are thirsty and I am thirsty. The horse puts back his head, as if to say, Ya Aba Abdullah, I won't drink until you drink. Imam Hussein puts his hand into the water. One of the enemies launches an arrow that strikes the Imam in the cheek. Imam's mouth fills with blood. His hand fills with blood. He discards it away. He wishes to take water out. He wants to drink. One of the enemies says, your women are being attacked. Imam Hussein gets on his horse, runs back to the camp, sees the women are safe. But does he have the energy to come out again to the river? No, he does not. While he's waiting, he begins to read dua. He says, Inna lillahi wa inna alayhi raji'un. Umar ibn Sa'ad begins to shout, why are you waiting? Do not let him get his energy back. If he gets his energy, it is as if we are fighting Ali ibn Abi Talib. The enemies began to attack him. They converted into 4 groups. One with spears, one with arrows, one with swords, one with rocks. One of the enemies, Abu al-Hutuf, brings a rock and throws it at the head of Imam Hussein. It strikes the Imam in the forehead. His face is covered in blood. He takes some of the blood. He covers his face with it. He says, this way the Prophet will welcome me. While he is doing this, one of the enemy launches a 3-pronged arrow. It strikes a holy Imam in his heart. He tries to get the arrow out. It will not come out. The Imam says, Bismillah wa billah wa ala millati Rasulillah. The enemies say that we saw him fall on his horse and begin to take out the arrow from his back. The enemies say, we saw 1/3 of the liver of Imam Hussein come out with this arrow. Imam Hussein is now weak. Blood is pouring out. He takes the blood, he covers his turban. He takes some blood, he covers his beard. He says, Wallah, this way I will look on Judgment Day. Bleeding all over my face and head. While he is there, the horse begins to move with Imam. Imam wants to fall off. He has no energy. He falls towards the right. The horse moves to the right. He moves to the left. The horse moves to the left. He says, my horse, please, I have no energy anymore. I cannot sit on your back. Let me fall to the ground. The narrators say the horse put its feet and hands forward and let Imam gently off its back. The horse stood up. Umar ibn Sa'ad says, get this horse. We want this horse. This is the horse of the Holy Prophet. They chase after the horse. The horse injures and kills 40 men. Umar ibn Sa'ad says, leave him alone. Now the horse is further away from Imam Hussein. It comes back towards Imam Hussein. What does it do? It nudges the Imam Hussein. It nudges it with its head. It says, Sayyidi, get up, defend the daughters of Rasulullah. Sayyidi, I don't want to see you on the ground. Imam Hussein says, I can't. I can't. I do not have the energy. What does the horse do? How does it inform Sayyidah Zainab? It puts Imam Hussein's blood all over its face. It covers its face in blood and begins to run back crying. Imam al-Baqir says the horse began to cry, saying, what a nation kills the son of the daughter of the Holy Prophet? Sayyidah Zainab says, Sakina, Sakina, come out. Your father Hussein has come back. Here is his horse. Sakina comes out to welcome the Imam. She sees the horse without a rider. She smacks her face. She says, my father has been killed. Woe upon me. Where's my father? The horse comes back. Sayyidah Zainab greets him and says, what has happened to you? Where is the rider that was on your back? The horse says, I will show you. Come with me. Sayyidah Zainab makes her way. She sees where the shuhada have been slain. She sees the right and left hand of Al-Abbas. She comes next to the body of Hussein. She falls next to the body of Hussein. She puts her hand underneath his head. She carries the head and she says, Allah, if you want sacrifice, take our sacrifice. Look at the iman of Sayyidah Zainab. Then she says, my brother, by the right of my grandfather, talk to me one last time. Imam is busy in dua. She says, by the right of my father, Amir al-Mu'mineen, talk to me one last time. He's in dua. She says, by the right of Fatima al-Zahra, talk to me one last time. The Imam opens his eyes. He looks at her and he says, my sister, you have broken my heart. Go back to the tent. Do not let the enemy see you in this way. While she is waiting, O Mu'mineen, she sees Shimr coming towards Imam Hussein. Inna lillah. He comes and strikes Sayyidah Zainab. He says, move away from him. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. What a sad day. What events are these? Tomorrow, inshallah, when you hear the recitation of the killing of Imam Hussein, remember the fire in your hearts, inshallah. These are the saddest days. For these days, the angels weeps. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيُّ مُنْقَلِبٍ يَنْقَلِبُ وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Let us pray quickly for the reappearance of the 12th Imam. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma kulli waliyika al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan. صلواتك وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Allahumma bless this gathering, bless this community, protect our brothers and sisters, our sons and daughters, our mothers and fathers. Make this ummah, this community and the wider ummah lovers of Imam al-Hussein. Bless us with the reappearance of the 12th Imam. Make us loyal soldiers and followers of Imam al-Hussein, in order that we send our thawab to the dead ones from this community, the shuhada, the ulama, the great ones that have passed. Let us recite Surah Al-Fatiha with salawat. I apologize if I took up some of your time. I do apologize, brothers and sisters. Jazakumullah khair, majalis of Abu Abdullah thawab for you. In order that your brothers at the back